It's time to take a ride on the Steelers Afternoon Drive with our co-hosts, Alan Saunders and Zachary Smith.
Welcome into another Steelers Afternoon Drive. I'm Zachary Smith. That is Alan Saunders. Alan, how are we doing?
Doing good. Had some news today. It was a little busy. I like busy. Early part of this week was slow. We don't like slow. We like busy.
Yeah, but like when it's right at right before 5, right at 5,
2
it's
days in a
like
row. It has
early.
been. Yeah. That's.
Can we get this out of the way a little bit earlier? But I want to start with that. I want to talk with that and see how much we can dive into what we think the Steelers top brass was doing at the Texas Pro Day. It certainly seems from the outside looking in, Alan, that they sent what we would call the house to the Texas Pro Day.
I did call it the house in the headline of my article.
There you go. There you go. And go check out that article. Not yet, once this episode is done. But what do we make of this? Who do you think that they were potentially there to get that many eyeballs on? And just where do we go from here?
Well, yeah, I mean, you got a lot of guys in this draft class. I don't know, like 8, 9 Texas players that could be legit Steelers fits. In addition to that, is this Arch Manning guy? I don't know if you heard of him. He's there, and so I think there's a lot of good reasons to go to a place like Texas, not just the players that you might draft this year.
Yeah.
And so, like, do you want to run down? Do we want to run down the options there, or who they were looking at, or I don't know how you want to.
Yeah, let me start. I'll throw you a name and you tell me just about like how the fit here, if you feel like it would make sense for the Steelers, if you think that was one of the players they would be there to see. I just start with my guy, Jahdae Barron, the cornerback. What do we make of that fit? Should it be one? And do you think that there's interest there from the Steelers?
I actually just put on my Twitter account the RAS most similar players list under Jahdae Barron. I think second or third down the list, Darius Slay.
Wow.
So that's kind of interesting. He's a little bit shorter than Slay, definitely has shorter arms. I think obviously at this point in Slay's career, much faster. The thing about Barron is, I'm not sure if he's a full-time outside corner. Like, he's probably more in that, like, Asante Samuel, Byron Murphy, like, could do a little bit of both type. Yeah. But, like, is that a downfall for the Steelers? Like, they have a guy outside they kind of like in Corey Trice they sort of want to see about. Barron would be able to play in the slot right away. And then next year, you could say, like, well, it'll either be Trice or Barron outside, and we'll see what happens. I don't think the Steelers will do it because they have not valued slot corner in that way. I kind of think that's a mistake. I think the Eagles, for example, look at what they just did with Cooper DeJean last year. Like, I think that is the exact blueprint for what I would want to do with Jahdae Barron for the Steelers this year. In fact, replace the same guy. Just let him play in the slot this year and then see if he plays well enough, move him to the outside. So I don't think it's a very Steelers kind of move, but I think it would be a really good move. I think he's a really good player.
Yeah, you mentioned within that answer there, like, should it detract the Steelers that he's not a full-time guy, maybe at either spot and can move around? And like, we were both talking up Asante Samuel Jr. for that exact reason in free agency, as a guy that could potentially do both. So, like, I don't think it should be, but potentially from their eyes, it's why they wouldn't have him as high. I'm curious to see, as we get closer, like, does he come in for a 30 or that'll tell us how much interest there is potentially there. Sticking on the defensive side, though, Alfred Collins is a name that's been mentioned as well along the defensive line. We know obviously how much interest they've had in defensive linemen. Now, I think he's interesting because he was in a boot right today, so didn't necessarily get to see him do a whole lot, but to become more familiar with the person, I guess. What do we make, though, of what his fit could be should he become a Steeler?
Great run stuffer. I mean, if that's what you're looking for with this move, absolutely a great run stuffer. Just a sort of very solidly built guy. I don't want to say he's like 320 plus probably. Hard to move. Doesn't have necessarily the sort of pass rush upside that a guy like Derek Harmon has, So Derrick Herman has right now pass rush ability, but like even the sort of upside because of the athlete, like a guy like maybe Walter Nolan, where like it's not necessarily developed, but you can sort of see the traits turning into it down the road. Maybe you don't see as much of that from Collins, but like really, really, really good run defender, strong tackler. Has played some nose tackle. I don't know that like he would only be a nose tackle. I think he can play honestly 0 to 5. But he's not like so big that he has to play nose tackle, but he probably could and has played there some. If I was playing him in Benton, I would put him inside and Benton outside. He's a bigger player. So I think a really good fit for the Steelers, probably a second round pick.
Is there another player? Because I know a lot of people are going to think, obviously Quinn Ewers going to the offensive side, the receivers there, Jaden Blue, a running back, I think is super interesting as well. Is there somebody else on the defensive side, maybe that we should be talking about as well? The safety, maybe.
Vernon Broughton is another defensive tackle. The Steelers met with both Collins and Broughton at the combine, both formal. Broughton is like bigger, taller, not bigger, but taller, longer, has that real long arm, high. He's like 6'4", 6'5", way better pass rusher, gets up the field better. I've seen projections for him all over the place from like 6th round to 3rd round. I really am not sure where he's going to go. I think he had like 4 or 5 sacks last year. I think he's a good prospect for them if they get that bigger guy early, and then they can go for like more of a pass rush type later. Although I do feel like him and Daniel Aquale are like pretty similar. Like you'd be getting a lot of the same there, but it's okay because Aquale's here for short term. But he's interesting. And then Andrew Makumba, the safety, with Emmanuel and with their interest in that position, I think we should take it seriously. He's a 3rd round pick. They have a 3rd round pick. Like if they want a safety, that feels like an option that's a lot more realistic than them doing it in the 1st round.
Zimbabwean descent. Pretty cool story if you want to look into him. But yeah, I think let me work in a question here since we just talked about 2 different defensive linemen because Stephen 116th brought this up. Do you think it easier to take a nose tackle type in the 1st round and then addressing like the 3 to 5 technique later on, or the 3 to 5 technique earlier and then a nose tackle in the later rounds, whether that's just like from a draft philosophy standpoint or even like specifically looking at this class, the way you'd attack it?
From a draft philosophy standpoint, a guy who is only a nose tackle is probably limited to being a day 3 pick. Now, if you have a guy like Kenneth Grant, who is a nose tackle and can also play 3 tech, a guy like Alfred Collins, who is a nose tackle and can also play 3 tech, I think those guys are actually some of the most valuable people. And so I don't think there's a way you have to do it. You certainly are not going to draft a pure nose tackle in the 1st round. Like, it's just not going to happen. You're not going to draft that guy until, like I said, day 3. Trying to think of it. Yahya Black from Iowa, 6th rounder probably. Is just a pure nose tackle. Like no pass rush, just giant. And so that guy is not going to be it first. But you can take Grant first and play him at nose tackle. You can take Collins first and play him at nose tackle. You can take Tyleik Williams maybe first and play him at nose tackle. Even Walter Nolan, like he's not big, but I think I would play Walter Nolan on the nose before Benton. Any of those guys you could take early and then go pure pass rush DT later. But it doesn't really, I don't think the order of operations matters, except if you're taking one early and it's a nose tackle, they got to be able to do both.
Yeah. Yeah, let me work something else in here too. We'll get back to the Texas offensive side here in a second, but the reason we're talking about defensive line, obviously, and potentially even expect them to double dip is that's just a group that we've seen kind of get ravaged, whether it be for age. Obviously, they need to replenish what's on that line. We've talked about how they got gashed down the stretch too, especially in the game against Baltimore. It just seems like it's going to be an emphasis now to really reassure that side of the trenches now that they hopefully feel like they've gotten that on the offensive side. And Tevin says here, when we talk about the run defense, you have 4 out of 5 starters coming back on the line and base, or 3 out of 4 in nickel. Lario, the only one missing. So was he the problem, or are you looking for the replacement for Cam when he comes off the field? Is it some sort of schematics with how they fill gaps in attack, or all the above, just trying to see how or what they're exactly going to fix this offseason?
Well, like let's talk about it in like real context here. What's the problem? They had like the 6th best defense in the league last year. Like they were not bad at anything. And so like it's not like they needed major changes to get to like, and so like, I think people aren't talking about this defense like it like did it fall short of its expectations? Absolutely. It was still really, really good. Still one of the best defenses in the league. So yeah, like changing one or two, like it's like a couple scheme tweaks and one or two changes and trying to find an eventual replacement for Cam Hayward and trying to find an eventual replacement for Darius Slay. Like it's not like they need big changes to this defense. And in fact, I think most of the problems were schematic last year and communication and things like that, not personnel. Their personnel is still right now before the draft elite. Like they have elite personnel. The problem is not the players. So if there's changes, it's got to be the other stuff. And they let 2 coaches go. So I think that's a start.
Yeah, when you look at the run defense specific, because absolutely, and I think it was very easy to tell, especially on the back half, and just like guys throwing their hands up with communication breakdowns in the back half of the defense, like very clearly that was the issue more so than the personnel. But when you talk about the run defense specifically in the way that they were getting gashed, he mentioned obviously Larry Ogunjobi exiting, needing a replacement there. Like, is that do you feel like that was the weak link among the defensive line in terms of why they weren't that great against the run down the stretch, or what?
I mean, I think he was the worst run defender of their 3 regular defensive linemen last year. Yeah. But I don't think it was like, oh, all this is Larry's fault. Like, I think the necessity to inject, like, their defensive line was pretty good, but like they didn't have a lot of high end talent. I think they need more of it. Without Larry, they definitely need more of it. It's a place they have been ripe for a reset for a while now, and they went to the offensive line first, and now I think they're going to the defensive line.
Yeah, like full context, I was talking about making these types of like investing early in the defensive side of the trenches prior to last draft. So it's just like now we're another year further down the line here, and thankfully we did see Cam Hayward have the type of year that he had to kind of, I don't want to say be able to kick the can down the road. I think you need to invest in it early now. But like if he had fallen off a cliff, what would the conversation be?
Well, and let me say this too. Like, do you remember going into last year's draft? We were talking about all the holes. Like, oh, they need a wide receiver. They need a center. Like there was so much pressure on last year's draft class for those guys to come in, and they needed a tackle, and they all needed to play right away. And it didn't work out that way, but they need, like this year's draft class, this D tackle. I mean, look, Daniel Aquale can play. Like, it's not like they need him to play. So I think they're in a real, like, again, like the negativity doesn't match up with reality, where like we were talking last year about, oh, there's so many needs, they're not going to get to them all. And defensive tackle was the one they did not get to, right? Where we said going to last year's draft, like one of these isn't going to make it. This year, I mean, they don't have very many draft picks, but they also don't need very much either. They need a D tackle. They need a future corner. They might need a wide receiver. They could kind of use a quarterback, a guard. Like that, guards are easy to find. A running back. Running backs are easy. I don't know. I think they're much. They're in a better situation going in this draft. Where I don't think I don't think after this draft we're going to be talking about, oh, well, here's what they need to do at 26 besides quarterback. Like quarterback's going to be it. But I think it sets up pretty well.
You just put something in my mind, and like I know that I've brought this up before, and again, this is like not necessarily relevant right now, but it is kind of crazy to think about. They lost 2 rookie seasons from last year's draft class, in a draft class where you just said, and I agreed with prior to, they needed to get immediate contributors and guys that could play right away, and they didn't get that from 2 of the guys that were their first 4 picks, and yet they still had a pretty good year, made the playoffs despite that happening, which is kind of crazy to think about.
And then you get those guys in this year. It's like they got a bonus first and third round pick in this year's draft.
Yeah. All right. Sticking with, sorry, now to go all the way back to Texas Pro Day and talk about the offensive side there. I know there's a lot of talk about the receivers, obviously. There's been some discussion about Quinn Ewers. Not that I necessarily enjoy that discussion taking place, but what do we make of the Texas offense and the Steelers' interest potentially in those players?
Yeah, Matthew Golden, potential first-round pick. Really fast riser, had a great college football playoff. Transfer from Houston, was not highly productive there, was not highly productive early in the season. Probably the biggest boom-bust guy in this entire draft, where, like, you could be getting an all-pro and you could be getting the next N'Keal Harry. Like it just could go either direction there. And I don't have a lot of confidence in, like, an evaluation of him. I'm not saying he's one or the other. I'm just saying I don't feel like I have a good feel for what's going to happen to him as an NFL player. Very risky first-round pick, but definitely someone we should consider on the board, especially with Arthur Smith being there. Quinn Ewers, probably a second-day pick, maybe into the fourth round. I like him a lot if you can get him in the fourth round. 5-star guy, committed to Ohio State, didn't get to play, went to Texas. Sort of kind of held off Arch Manning for a year and a half. Not particularly accurate. We'll see if that was, like, I don't know. It's just, there's a lot of talent there that has not come together on the field. He's an interesting prospect, though, because he does have the talent. He has the size. He has the measurables. I feel like he has the makeup. I also feel like these Texas wide receivers are going to be leaving their pro day thinking, thank God we don't have to do that anymore. Because, like, you can see on the tape, like, the frustration in those guys at the placement of the passes at times. And Isaiah Bond is the other wide receiver. He's more of a Z or a slot guy. Said he was going to break the Combine 40 record, then didn't even come close. Did better running in his pro day, mid 4.3s from what was reported. That'll play in the NFL. I've heard he's kind of a personality. Obviously, that anecdote should tell you a little bit, but, you know, you can see it on tape too, man. He's going to want the ball. He's going to be frustrated when he's not going to get the ball. He's going to not run very hard on plays where he knows he's not going to get the ball. He was the guy who was originally talked about as a first-round pick in this draft class. Now I think you're more likely to get him in the 70s or the 80s. Steelers obviously picking at 83, right in the prime of that group. So, and then the last guy on offense, Jaden Blue. I remember I was on Locked On with Carter at the Combine, and he was like, give me a deep sleeper. And Jaden Blue was in the, like, 500s at NFL mock draft database. And I'm like, this guy's going to run a 4.3 and he's going to start rising. And boy, has he risen. And then today he ran a 4.25 and it's going to keep going. Not a lot of production, was not highly used in that scheme for whatever reason, but he is blazing fast and a perfect fit for the Steelers wide zone.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. I think the stuff we just talked about, like, before we knew that this was going to be happening, they were going to send the house to Texas. I think it was just yesterday we talked about Isaiah Bond, right? Like, in the Steelers being the team as of late that has stopped those slides should one take place for Isaiah Bond. It's interesting to hear some of the character stuff that he brought in there as well. I think the Steelers would very much like to get away from that, but at the same time, like, as of right now, you look at what's on the roster and certainly would fit with what's there in terms of that. And, like, I feel like that's more receivers than not you just described, to be honest with you.
Especially the good ones. Like,
that's not something that necessarily scares me away. I don't think it will scare them away. But Jaden Blue, man, it's like in a very good running back class. I can understand why there's some guys that have kind of maybe gotten lost in the shuffle here. I feel like he was one of those guys early, but like you said, I feel like it's starting to pick up in terms of the chatter surrounding him.
Jaden Blue on January 24th, so that's 2 days before the Combine. 430 on the NFL mock draft database, big board. Right now, he is 190, has been as high as 155. And after he ran a 4.25 today, I got a feeling that's going up even more.
Yeah. A friend of the show, Nick Faribault, likes him a lot too. And if you're just talking about specifically for the Steelers, a really good fit, you mentioned the wide zone stuff. Like, it kind of screams to me like that could be a guy. Like, if they don't go running back early, if they're going to check other boxes early on, that's a name to keep an eye on for sure. I guess the conversation is now, is he going to go higher than when when they're going to wait on a back. If that's the case, like, is he a guy that could sneak into the back, like in those comp picks maybe on day 2, like in round 3? Like, I don't know, potentially.
I will say this: there are
Yeah.
about 4 or 5 backs that are like, so Damian Martinez is like
Mhm.
a 5th round pick or late 4th.
Mhm.
And there's like 4 or 5 guys between them, and I think Jaden Blue is better than all of them. Like Trevor Etienne, Jarquez Hunter, Brashard Smith, RJ Harvey. Give me Blue over all those guys. I think I'd rather have Blue than Ollie Gordon too.
Oh yeah, I agree with that for sure. What was
Like
who was
to
the first name you
me,
said?
there's not that big of a difference between Blue and Bashul Tootin. And we've seen Tootin
Mm,
rise all the way up to
yeah.
the fringe of the edge of the 3rd round, and I think they're very
Mhm.
similar.
Yeah, the thing with Tootin, and honestly, I saw a lot of people responding on this morning rush about, because it was, the discussion was about Jalen Warren, saying about Tootin, is he gonna be able to clean up the fumbles? I think that that's another thing to keep an eye on with him. He might just be carrying around a rock like the entire training camp to see if they can get that down before he even touches the field. But yeah, I mean, I in terms of value, he probably is right now the best value, but we'll see how he continues to rise there. Anybody else from the Texas Pro they might have their eyes on?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple offensive linemen. I know we talked about that. There's a guard named Jake Majors, probably
Mm,
like a 6th or 7th round pick. Gunnar Helm, tight end. I don't know how high on tight end in this draft class they are. I know they had Fredo Roberts at
yeah.
Miami yesterday. That's interesting. And I think that's probably, there's a tackle, there's a 1st round tackle, Kelvin Banks, but I mean, like,
Yeah.
no chance that's happening, right? Cameron Williams is another tackle who's like a day 2 pick, probably 2nd round. I don't see that as being very likely.
Mhm.
And Baron Sorrell is like a small edge rusher that like actually looks very Steelersy to me, but I don't know. Like,
So small edge rusher. So is the conversation going to be, is he an off ball guy at the next level, or do you think he'll play on the edge?
um, I think he'll play on the edge. Short arms, but I think he'll play on the edge. He's too
Yeah.
big. He's like
Okay.
he's too like stiff to be an off ball guy. Kind of like, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, maybe you could turn him into an Landon Roberts, I guess, if you wanted to. But I think he'll
Mm.
be an edge. But I think he's good. I like him. Not a lot of
With you,
production.
bro.
Gets hurt. I think he had an injury.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was just saying I'm not not super familiar as somebody that started to dive into a lot of the Texas stuff after seeing the news today. But yeah, one of the, 2 people basically asked the same thing, so I feel like this is definitely worth bringing up. Both Matt Nerdy and Desert Cactus, so names that you have definitely heard us bring up before with our comments here in the YouTube community. Wanted to know about trading back, but Alan, they brought up the idea of adding 26 capital via trade back as opposed to this year. And I just, it's an interesting thought because it coincides with kind of the way that they approach free agency and stockpiling the comp picks, right? So could the idea here once again be to stockpile and add to that 26 cabinet?
I don't think if they're trading down in the 1st round, that would be something they would be looking at. They have among the smallest amount of draft capital in the entire league right now.
Mhm.
And I think when you have that and you're talking about trading back, I would think that the idea is to add to the pool, right? So like gain ground even when you're moving back, because you move up farther later than you move back. Trade back 5 spots in the 1st round to move up from the 4th to the 2nd, and you end up netting more, right? So I think that's probably more like what they would be looking to do. But I will say, there's always opportunities later in the draft to flip a pick or move
Mhm.
down a bit or whatever. I can see one where like maybe let's say they get themselves into the 4th round and they're like, okay, the big boxes are checked. All we really want's a quarterback. And they look at the board and nobody's going to take a quarterback for 20 picks. So like you just trade back in the 4th and like, you know, trade up from the 5th to the 4th next year, right? Or the 6th to the 5th next year, or something like that. You can do
Mhm.
moves like that. Those are always easy to come by. But you can't really plan them out. You just got to see how the draft board looks.
Yeah. Speaking of, moving around the board and a trade that we mentioned. Oh, by the way, YouTube loved your trade idea with George Pickens going to Green Bay. I say loved jokingly. They were not a fan of the idea of trading George Pickens, especially the one with Malik Willis. But even with Dontavian Wicks and a pick, it didn't seem like they were too fond of. But that would obviously be a way to acquire some draft compensation at George Pickens trade. Of course, you would need to replace him with one of those draft selections as well.
Not if you get Wicks. Yeah. You get Wicks, you're good.
Yeah, that would be an interesting room to see how it would fill out.
You still need a wide receiver either way. They still need. Look, they cannot go into the season with just Pickens, Metcalf, the 2 slot guys, Skoranek and Miller. They have no backup outside receiver. There has to be another, unless it's Skoranek. You're not going to start Ben Skoranek if Pickens pulls a hamstring. Like, you got to have another player in that room. So they need another wide receiver no matter what anyway. I don't really think that would change it. It's just giving you a different type. It lets that other receiver be whoever you want it to be. Say you get a pick. You say you get a 3rd and Pickens or 3rd and Wicks for Pickens. Then you could go get Trey Harris or Jaden Higgins with that 3rd round pick.
Yeah. And I'm certainly on board. Love both those guys. The other thing that the YouTube comments have not been a big fan of, really, basically his entire tenure, is Arthur Smith. And a lot of people were bringing up, we were talking about the marriage with Aaron Rodgers and how that would potentially go, that relationship. And a lot of people were like, well, you know what? Just scrap the idea of Arthur Smith in general. Don't even let him work with Aaron Rodgers. Fire him before the two even get together. We've talked about how we think it will go, of course, from an on-field perspective. It's hard to, we can't guess how that relationship is going to be, right? Like, especially before they even get to working together, how it's going to go. Now, we can say we saw how things unfolded with Russell Wilson, and we've seen how things have unfolded with Aaron Rodgers and his coaches and coordinators in the past relationship, how unique it was, and kind of him running the show, and maybe get a little bit of an idea. But yeah, the YouTube comments, not a big fan of Arthur Smith, Alan, as I'm learning here.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's coaching. I think you can say it's not a great, look, who is the offensive coordinator outside of Nathaniel Hackett who you're like, yes, he'd love to work with Aaron Rodgers. Seems like a difficult guy to work with, not going to lie. Seems like he's going to be a bit domineering and get what he wants, whether you like it or not. That's the job, man. So I don't think you're going to hear Arthur Smith complain about it. But I think I'll just say that's not what he's good at. There are people who are the quarterback whisperer guys, who are the, very much Bruce Arians, right? Was very much hey, here's the quarterback. I'm going to just facilitate what this guy wants. I'm going to make him happy. I'm going to find a way to get it done. That's not his MO. So I think it's fair to predict that that's probably not, it's not an obviously successful pairing. Doesn't mean it can't be. It's just not obvious.
I guess in something that comes to my mind here when talking about that, and I'm curious to see just how we'll see it play out. Being hands off from the offense, but being hands on in terms of the personality. I wonder if Mike Tomlin will almost be a mediator there, being able to control the two personalities of Arthur Smith and Aaron Rodgers and almost be the middleman for those two in that relationship.
It's interesting. I thought about, I think a middleman in that relationship is something that we should, if it happens, should consider somehow, some way. Senior offensive assistant Nathaniel Hackett.
Oh boy, okay, yeah. Things that have not gone over well and I'm not saying that it's a bad idea again because he's not the offensive coordinator, he's not a head coach, but that is something that the YouTube comments would absolutely love. We're already this deep into things that they hate. Oh man, I can imagine if the Steelers hired Nathaniel Hackett, what's going to happen there.
I mean, the guy's a recent head coach and an offensive coordinator. And was a successful offensive coordinator with Green Bay. I mean, he's qualified for the job. Far more qualified for the job than the guy they got right now. Who, by the way, I can't believe they is Mike Sullivan really going to come back? I don't know. That's bizarre to me.
What is that? Actually, that's his title.
Yeah,
senior offensive assistant.
I mean, you can have more than one. It's not
yeah, yeah. But I didn't even know because I don't even know what he and I've asked some people in terms of like what his role is, and it's just like, oh, he just kind of helps out here and there. Like what? Like I don't understand what his
role was. He worked on with the backs and receivers on Yak. That was like his primary responsibility, which is like the narrowest, dumbest thing of all time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do we do? Well, we got to have a role for that guy. I know that I mentioned several times about like adding to the staff and having guys that are there for one specific reason and feeling like that's a way to kind of that's not what I'm talking about. I don't think you need a guy there specifically for that.
No, having someone who is just the Aaron Rodgers coach. Now that is that is worth doing.
Yeah, that's absolutely worth doing. So, man, all right, now that's on my mind. If we get Aaron Rodgers, is Nathaniel Hackett loading for the Pittsburgh Steelers coaching staff? Oh boy.
Yeah, I definitely think someone like I would not like. Okay, I don't think the Steelers should be like the Jets and let Aaron Rodgers push them around in terms of like who needs to be on the team and what they're going to do or any of that stuff. He's not that good of a player anymore. He needs to take them as they come, not the other way around. But I do think hiring a coach with some experience working with him it's just like giving Arthur Smith the used car and the owner's manual with the service history, right? Like give him at least a chance to succeed. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like otherwise he's just flying blind.
Yeah. Can you imagine, like, from Arthur Smith's perspective, he was like, yep, we need to get rid of Russell Wilson. Thank you for doing that. Oh, wait, we're bringing in who? Like, I mean,
this quarterback that I'm not saying he said this, but like, we got this quarterback that I just cannot work with anymore. Fine, we'll get rid of him. Aaron Rodgers it is. So,
yeah, exactly. I think that you said that a couple episodes ago, like, he's probably the biggest reason that Russell Wilson's not coming back, but this is certainly not what he was asking for in terms of a replacement either.
Yes, I'd agree with that.
All right, good stuff. We appreciate the comments as always. Keep those coming, whether it's a question, topic for a future episode. Going to need those. We continue to work through the offseason here, although less than a month until the draft. We're getting pretty good at doing this podcasting the entire year, even through the offseason, Alan. But until tomorrow, tell the people they can find you.
At @Saunders_PGH on X, Instagram, TikTok, and Blue Sky. And tomorrow, you'll be able to find me in Columbus, Ohio at the Ohio State Pro Day.
Ooh.
And so this show will be Steelers Afternoon Drive on Interstate 70, probably. So stay tuned for that. Should be fun. And Ed Thompson may be making a special appearance from the passenger seat. So we'll go with that. And then, of course, go over to SteelersNow.com. Check out all my written work. I got a big story about the Texas Pro Day today. Also, did a big dive on the offseason needs and where they are and sort of recapped a little bit of that today when I was talking about how the holes are mostly filled. And then, like, subscribe, hit that bell for notifications here on the YouTube platform so you don't miss an episode. Steelers Morning Rush, Steelers Afternoon Drive. We're going to have videos coming from Columbus. And, Smitty, it's your number. I guess we went up 99, 15,372 subscribers. And you called this one earlier, so I'm going to give it to you.
Yeah, I wanted to go with Darnell Stapleton yesterday at 72, so...
Oh, I thought you were going to go with Willington Prevalon.
No, see, I didn't want to use because I kind of pseudo used it last time by mentioning it. So, yeah.
All right. Darnell Stapleton's good. I'll go Wayne Gandy, an old tackle from the 90s or early 2000s.
Oh, early 2000s? Okay. So I should know that name. I do not, though.
99 to 02, Wayne Gandy.
Wow. All right. Well, there you go. Also, nice to know that there's a Big Ten school that actually lets media members participate in the pro days. Appreciate that. That's a shot at Michigan, by the way. If you are listening somewhere else, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast from, be sure to leave a 5-star review and subscribe over there. Just search Steelers Afternoon Drive. Do the same thing on TikTok, and then you'll find me everywhere. Zachary Smith, PGH. For Alan Saunders and myself, thanks for jumping in. Take another ride on the Steelers Afternoon Drive.